Well, there were two really great years where I walked away super inspired by the movies that I saw, and it like made me fall in love with filmmaking even more. But this year, it made me hate filmmaking so much.
Welcome to the Solo Moviegoers podcast. I came in with a little extra energy there. Sorry about that. This podcast is a podcast in which me, Sean, and my daughter, Kaya, we typically go to the theater to see movies alone. We go to see the same movie within 24 hours of each other. We're not allowed to talk to each other or anyone else about the movie. And then we come here to this podcast and we discuss the movie and our theatrical experience. However, this is a very special episode in which we are discussing the movies that we watched alone as part of virtual Sundance 2025. So we each watched a handful of movies, watched a couple of the same movies, a couple different movies to give you guys an overall experience of what Sundance Film Festival was like. Sundance is something that's very special to both me and Kaya. We've been there together. We've had movies that we've worked on there. And it's a place that we really love and respect for its celebration of the kinds of films that we love. So this was a really fun, I thought it was a really fun experience. What did you think?
Well, I want to first say, like, we haven't podcasted in a while, and, like, we were supposed to do another thing before Sundance. Can I talk about my movie experience the last time?
You can. Let me contextualize this for a second. We were supposed to see a movie. Kaya will explain why it didn't work out. And then we haven't podcasted in a minute because I start shooting a movie that Kaya is going to come work on for a bit. I start shooting it next week, so it's like been kind of crazy in prep. But we are going to try to keep the podcast going while the movie's shooting. It's just not going to be quite as frequent for the next 5 weeks. Anyways, Kaya, continue. Your last attempted theatrical experience.
No, I think it's so crazy. So we were going to see, it was Inheritance, right? Mm-hmm. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's obviously like a limited showing of that movie. What did you say? Because it's at IFC.
We were interested in seeing it. I like IFC. I've worked with them. It seemed like a really cool movie that was like a action style movie shot on iPhones all over the world for a relatively low budget. Like that's a dream kind of project for me and for Kaya. And we were just really excited to see how they did it. So Kaya went to see it first and
I drove all the way to the Americana at 10 a.m. to see this movie. I get there, it's not working. And they're like, okay, you could do the next available showtime, 10 p.m. I'm like, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to come back here at 10 p.m. That's crazy. So I look on the maps to see, like, okay, where can I see this? Where's the next showing? And there was another showing around 2 or 12 in Van Nuys. And so I'm like, okay, I'll just drive there and go see this movie. I get there immediately when I walk in, the guy at the front is like, hey, like, we're so sorry, the movie is having technical issues, we're not showing it until 2:40, but we'll give you your money back and you can see any other movie that's playing right now. So I'm like, okay, what's playing right now? And it, like, literally the only thing that I hadn't seen was One of Them Days. So that's what I saw instead. And we talked about this before. I didn't want to see this on the podcast because of the fact that we would be able to get Rel to be on our podcast to talk to, and I'm too nervous to do that. But I saw it anyway, and I was the only person in there. It was total private screening to myself, and it was like probably one of the best movie-going experiences. It was super funny, and I really liked it. SZA was really good. Keke Palmer was really good. My whole day turned on. I was having an awful day. I was driving around to go see a movie all day, and then I was able to see something that was actually really funny. So
that's crazy. I've never tried to see the same movie twice and been denied twice. The worst experience I've had similar to that, I went to a midnight screening of The Dark Knight Rises, which is like a 3-hour movie at the worst. Okay, this is, I don't like putting people on blast, but the worst of all IMAXs, the Universal City Walk IMAX.
Ew.
It's a fine theater, but you have to go to Universal City Walk. You have to park at the theme park. You
That's
have
the
to,
craziest
go
theater
through-
ever.
It's a crazy place to see a movie. No one should see a movie there, but
No.
I don't know what I was doing. I usually saw those movies at the ArcLight, but for some reason, I had midnight tickets to see on the night it came out to see this in IMAX. Maybe it was the only place showing it on film in IMAX. I can't remember the details because it was a long time ago, but the print broke. And people were
Wow.
going nuts. We were like, this is a bunch of nerds that are up at midnight to see this Batman movie in IMAX on a 35 on an IMAX print, not even 35 millimeter print, an IMAX print, a 70 millimeter print, and the print doesn't work. And they sent us out into the hallway. People were so mad that they were pulling the fire alarm multiple times,
my
and we
God.
all had to exit and then come back in. The movie started at 2:30 in the morning. I got home at like 6:50 a.m. or like 7 a.m. or something. It was crazy, but
I would not stay.
at that point you're in. Like
That's
you're
nuts.
committed. You have to. I feel. But yeah. Other than that, I haven't had much experience with broken prints. I've had a couple issues with prints where they like get herky jerky at some point, but I've never
Yeah.
straight up. The only thing I can think of is that so there's like an encryption key that connects with the digital prints now, and the encryption key must have been wrong, or like whomever from the distributor was or from the exhibit at some point, some sort of technical error, not to place blame on anybody when I'm speaking in complete ignorance, but there was some sort of, my guess is that encryption key was not the correct encryption key for that time and that day, and that's why they knew the movie would start at
Yeah.
2:40, because it was like not open for that time, because you can do that. You can set times for
Oh,
when the
weird.
movie can play on the key. It's like anything else. It's like any other sort of digital encryption. Like I can send you a file that you can only open at a certain time on a certain computer.
Yeah.
They can do the same thing so that people can't just like, it prevents a theater from being able to run the movie more times than the theater is paying for. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
in most cases it's like a ticket split, but they just don't want the theater running the movie endlessly. They don't want a festival playing the movie more times. They don't want somebody like who works somewhere getting a copy of the file and running prints in their backyard or screenings in their backyard or whatever it is. It's just like a security measure, and my guess is that went wrong. But
Yeah.
I don't want to spend too much time talking about One of Them Days. I want to see it. Everyone says it's great. It's like universally
great.
beloved. At this point, I will probably not see it in the theater. I will probably,
Yeah.
just because I have the movie coming up. And if I see anything in the theater before the movie starts shooting, I think it's going to be either Companion or
Yeah, same.
What's the Soderbergh one? Presents?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to see those.
Companion's definitely on the list for me.
But anyway, so that
Sundance.
was supposed to be our last theatrical screening, and then we were
Yeah.
going to do virtual Sundance. And this is, so we usually have a bit of a format to the way that we do this show, where we introduce the movie, we talk about our theatrical experience. Oh, did you have coffee or like multiple coffees? We always talk about what coffee we had.
During
or was this a no
Sundance?
coffee? No, during one of them days. Did you, like,
No,
go-
because I finished it. I finished it at 10 a.m. when I went to go see Inheritance. So
Nice. I'm actually having coffee
Yeah.
right now. I'm having an espresso with the you guys bought me an espresso maker for my birthday. Or was it
can't wait
Christmas?
to try it.
It was Christmas.
Christmas.
My birthday and Christmas are close to one another. So, oh yeah, I'm
Yeah.
older than I was the last time we podcast. We podcasted a couple days before
It's
my
been
birthday.
so long.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
I've
Wow.
aged a year. I don't feel like it though. I feel like I've gone in reverse. I'm on the Brian Johnson reversing my biological age plan right now.
Aren't
so
we
you guys will
all?
continue to see me getting younger over the course of this podcast. Eventually, Kaya and I are
Look
going
as
to
young
meet in
as
the middle.
me, yeah. You'll also look 12.
Yeah, true story. Kaya looks so young that when she flies in the exit row of the airplane, they ask her if she's 13.
Yeah.
I think that's the age you have to be. Is it 13 or 15 to sit in the exit row?
I think it's 13. I've been asked on flights if I was 13. And when actually tangent, when I went to Hawaii, they give you like this paperwork to fill out, like why you're going and all of this stuff, just because. And they didn't give it to me because I looked like a minor.
Wow.
So
That's hilarious. I thought you were minor traveling alone. Did they like offer to help you off the plane, or like offer to get, like give you one of those tags from the
that
pilots,
happens
the
all the
wings?
time. That happens all the time. So
It's amazing.
Truly.
Take advantage of it.
yeah, I
Take
am.
everything they'll give you. Every free service.
Yeah.
Airport greeters are
Best.
expensive.
Uh-huh. True.
So, virtual Sundance. I've developed a new addiction, which is eating cereal at night. And I was eating cereal while watching all these Sundance movies at like
That's
between
the
between
greatest
10
thing.
and midnight. Multiple bowls of cereal. So no
That's
coffee for
when,
me.
like, that's like you've made it in life is eating cereal late at night and watching a movie.
Right.
Nothing beats that.
It's pretty great. I gotta say, there aren't many things better in life than I mean, obviously being at the theater with some sort of iced Americano or cold brew is pretty great. But watching a movie at home with a bowl of cereal, second best.
It would be epic if they had a cereal bar at movie theaters.
Dude, what if we just brought our own cereal? Like, okay, to the
Yeah.
same argument, the same argument that we make that, oh, here's our argument for bringing coffee. You're not supposed to bring outside food or beverages into a movie theater. However, we have a strong argument that unless they offer, like, we're not competing. I'm not going to get a Coca-Cola or like a wild cherry Pepsi because they don't have coffee. That's crazy. I want a
Yeah.
coffee. If they
Yeah.
sold coffee, and I have something to tell you, if they sold coffee at most theaters, I would 100% buy a coffee at that theater every single time.
Same.
Imagine Birmingham now has cold brew. I
That's
haven't had it yet. I went there the other day to get popcorn to watch a movie at home and with the family, and I saw that they had cold brew. So next time I go there, maybe
Oh
when I
my
see
God.
Companion, I'm going to try it. I'm really excited. This could be a game changer.
Next time we go to the theater together, we should sneak in cereal and get cold brew.
You're going to be here next week. We are going to a movie
I know.
and we're taking cereal. We'll take
Yeah.
bowls. We'll take everything. We're going to eat cereal. Yeah, cereal in the theater is going to be the best. But
Okay.
anyway, people aren't here to listen to our delicious cereal eating habits. They are here to hear about Sundance. So, where do you want to start? We don't really have a format for this. We normally have a format. We talked about that. We don't for this. We're freestyling it. We haven't even talked about what we're going to talk about, except for we know we each saw 4 movies. So,
Well,
where do you want to
actually,
start?
I saw 5, but we had like 3 movies that we both saw.
So let's start
together.
there. Let's start there.
Did I see? Yeah.
Let's start
I
with
don't
the
even know.
with the movies that we both saw. Let's also I want to caveat this entire conversation by saying I love you're about to like rip someone up if you start the conversation by talking about how much you love them or
How
like
she
them.
love them, yeah.
That's my mom's move. My mom for years she'll be like, she's a dear sweet person, but and then just lay into them savagely.
Yeah.
So when you love something, you have to call it out on its flaws. Or when you love someone, you have to call them out on their flaws, or else it's not real love. I truly love Sundance. I think it's been an amazing place that has amazing movies. It's done a ton for film culture. That's done a lot for culture at large. I was pretty let down this year. I dangerous thing to say for somebody who's 100% going to try to get a movie into Sundance next year.
I could have gotten a movie into Sundance by myself this year. That's how I feel. I could have shot something on my iPhone by myself, edited it, and sent it.
I normally watch the Sundance movies and I walk away, and this isn't to say it was a bad experience. There were movies I loved that I saw, but there were movies I didn't love that I saw, and I also think that normally almost every movie that's in, I watch, and there's like a little piece of me that's like, wow, they did something really great. I get why this movie is in the most prestigious American festival. I get it. And I saw movies this year that I don't feel that way about.
Yeah. I feel like normally, well, there were 2 really great years where I walked away super inspired by the movies that I saw, and it like made me fall in love with filmmaking even more. But this year, it made me hate filmmaking so much. It was like student films, like think of a college project that you want to turn into a film, and then like a bunch of kids get together and make that. That's how it felt.
Yeah, every year Sundance says we had more submissions than ever, and I don't know if that was the case this year or
No
not,
way.
but I don't know how like truly qualified a lot of the submissions were because I was, and look, this also we have to caveat this by saying not every movie was available for virtual Sundance. There were a couple of
That's
movies
the
that I
thing.
really wanted to see that weren't
Same.
available, and I was pretty mad about it. Rabbit Trap.
I think this is the
really,
first year that it's been like that, right?
I think so. What was it? I think the chair was available, but why didn't we see the chair? I don't know why I didn't see the chair. I want to see
It
that.
wasn't available.
It wasn't available? Okay,
No.
Rabbit Trap wasn't available. Magic Farm wasn't available.
I
Those were
know.
like three of my top movies, and couldn't see them.
Yeah.
Which
I couldn't see any of them.
is, I get it. They need to draw people to. I don't know if filmmakers at this point are allowed to opt out of the virtual, and obviously they want to bring people to the in-person festival, and especially like this year's going to be 2026 will be the last year that Sundance is in Park City, so I don't know what's going on there, what kind of like political things are happening. But yeah, the virtual selection for, and I know it was different too. So like my friend Mark had a virtual pass, and he was able to see more movies than we were because we bought individual tickets. So he couldn't see everything, but there were things that were available to him that we couldn't see. I think that's a flaw.
That makes sense.
Because there's only 4 days to watch the movies.
I know.
I don't, it's not, we've done that before where we've watched 3 or 4 movies a day for however many days. We couldn't do that this year because we were both working. And
I was expecting to be able to pick that many movies though, but when I went to buy them, I was like, I can't even think of 5 of these movies that I want to watch.
Yeah, if there were more movies available, I would have made time for them.
Yeah.
I would have watched a
for
movie
sure.
before my prep day and after at the end. Like I would have woken up early to watch movies if the right movies were there. Like 100%. Rabbit Trap, I would wake up at 5 a.m. to watch that. And so yeah, it was a mixed bag this year. There was some, I'm really excited. Actually, my favorite movie of the festival that did inspire me, really inspired me. It gave me that feeling of really wanting to go make something you didn't see, which is a bummer. It inspired me so much. I emailed one of the producers and asked him to talk about making the film. So I'm going to talk to him this week because just want to pick his brain. But let's just start in order. So the first movie we saw, Deaf President Now, documentary that I really dug. I thought it was great. I thought it was
really great.
I thought it was cool. I thought there's a theme this year, by the way. Let me just throw this out. There are more movies about sound and hearing than I think any Sundance ever, or like any festival ever. So there's Deaf President Now, Rabbit Trap, which we mentioned, It Didn't Die, which we watched, which is about podcasters, and at least one more, the Marley Matlin documentary. What is it called? But she is an actor who is also deaf. It's called Not Alone Anymore. So there's at least like 4 movies that involve sound, 2 about the experience of people who are deaf. That seems strange. Like, do you think, is this okay? So because we're podcasting, is this like some sort of, no, it's like, so do we have some sort of bias where we're looking for sound since we're working in sound, or is podcasting becoming more of a part of culture? Sound is becoming more of a part of culture, or is it just coincidence that these are the movies that were submitted and made?
I think it's probably a coincidence, but I will say, like, I so wish that I was able to see this in the theater because the sound was so insane. And I was just listening to it on my computer, obviously, and I noticed it right away. It was, like, the biggest part of the movie for me. And I will say
headphones?
this was my favorite. No, never. This was definitely my favorite movie that I saw, which is, like, kind of crazy because it's a documentary and it's, like, it wasn't supposed to be like that all the rage, but yeah.
Not my favorite, but I mean not my favorite as in like it wasn't my favorite. No, it was my number 2.
Yeah.
I loved it, and yeah, the sound is really interesting. It was funny because one of the interview subjects like called out the filmmakers for having a microphone because they were signing.
Yeah.
It's like, what is this thing for? And they had actors read the signing. So it was like the opposite of the way that interpretation, it was the opposite of the way you normally think of interpretation, where a lot of times, like, if you're watching somebody give a speech, they're speaking the speech, and alongside of them is an ASL interpreter. Well, the interview subjects were speaking in ASL, and there was an interpreter or like actor who was expressing in verbal speech what they were saying, which I thought was really cool and really effective. I really dug it. And then they use sound to at times take the sound away. And what the other interesting thing I thought was when you think of a okay, so the basic story, super simple. It's a university that was a
The first
university,
deaf university.
yeah, founded by Lincoln, right? Wasn't that?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is wild. So the first deaf university in the world, and I believe the only deaf university of its kind in the world, and it had never had a deaf president. And it gets to, what was it, the 70s?
I think so.
Anyway, yeah, something
Yeah,
like
it
that.
doesn't matter.
And there's a new president. The school is, the board at the school is going to select a new president, and the deaf students want a deaf president for obvious reasons, because the person who is in charge of their educational experience should understand their life experience. And the board chooses a hearing person as the president, and the student body erupts and they protest, and sort of all hell breaks loose in a really interesting way. But the way that they got across the protest, they in moments put you there, because protests are loud, and that wasn't the case here. So like, you had the people who would normally be up screaming with a bullhorn were people who were signing, and they even talk about that. Like, there were two guys that were sort of vying for being the figurehead. The one guy, he signs loud, because like, I guess they for a long time, deaf people were sort of like cast off from society. The one guy, literally his dad had to work in a basement, and that was pretty common for deaf people. And the other guy's grandpa told him to sign small, so like sign within a box. And the other guy like signed loud, which is the equivalent of talking loud. So the one guy's like a good sign speaker, the other guy's very reserved. And so there's interpersonal drama and conflict, ultimately, while trying to win this really important get this really important win for deaf culture at large, and for the student body in particular. And it's just a great story, and it's really well executed, and I dug everything about it.
I really loved, there were a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. It's like, it kind of showed their perception of the rallies and the protests, and it's like obviously totally silent, but then they'll show like footage of it, and it's like they're pulling every fire alarm. That's how they would have their meetings, was by pulling the fire alarms, so the lights would go off so everyone knew where to go. And I also really liked how, instead of like the people doing the voices for the deaf people, like, instead of having them say what they were saying when it was like a bad thing, like if they said like, I'm gonna swear, like fuck you or something, or like if they had their middle fingers up, like, they didn't have sound for those parts. And I thought it was super powerful, because normally in times where there's like very loud or very like expressive phrases, you hear it, but there was nothing. So I don't know. I loved it. It was definitely like it when I saw this, because it was the first movie that I saw. I was so excited for Sundance to start.
Yeah, me too. Which I think is a really good segue into the second movie I watched, which was the movie I was most excited about of the movies that we were able to see, which was Didn't Die. Which also was a movie about sound. It was about podcasters in, sort of, not as much as I thought it was going to be based on the description, but it was about people surviving an apocalypse, like a long time, a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
A while. Like, the zombie apocalypse has been going on for a while. They sort of settled into a new society, and these people happen to be podcasters, and they were reconnecting with other family members because they've been out on the road podcasting their experience of the zombie apocalypse, as one does. And it was somewhere between like a family dramedy and a zombie apocalypse horror-ish movie. The concept for this movie is amazing. Like
Read the description, and it's like, who thought of this? It's so good.
It's great. It is a great description. Sorry, it's getting a little dark in here. I would have used a ring light, but I didn't think I had to. So just deal with it. Deal with my pixelation, fools.
Season.
Ooh, no, not spooky season. So, okay, this is going to be hard for me. I was actually thinking about this on my run today. I don't think that there's a whole lot of benefit to me saying a bunch of super negative things about movies, because there's enough people to do that. And for me, when people just like hate on my movie, it doesn't do anything for me. I'm like, okay, you didn't dig it. Like, that's fine. You didn't dig it. But like, just to give context, both of the movies I've directed, I have had on the same movie comments on Letterboxd. People say it's the worst movie they've ever seen. Worst movie they've ever seen. sure, and that it's the best movie they've ever seen. How can these two things both be possible? I don't think they can be.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of subjectivity. I also, when people will just like say like, yes, okay, filmmakers read the comments. When people will say something that's just like wholly just unproductively negative, I just wonder why. Like, why are you doing this? So I don't want to contribute to that kind of I don't know, vitriol isn't the right word, but something like that. I don't want to just like, I don't want to give a hot take. However,
I will.
You can. I also don't want to be a total phony, and I don't
Yeah.
want to not say what I think wasn't great. So I
Yeah.
think Didn't Die. Look, I didn't make the movie. You made the movie. It got into Sundance. Good for you. I think the concept was great. I think the third act of the movie showed the potential that the movie had because it starts to get violent, it starts to get scary, it starts to get interesting. But I think that up until that point, it wasn't what I had wanted based on what the concept was. It wasn't. I felt, first of all, and this is something I hope can change, is that I think sound design is one of the most critical elements of horror, and this sound design felt really unfinished to me. And it's a festival screener, so they could have not expected to get into Sundance and got in late and not had a ton of time. Like, to me, it kind of even felt like the coda to the movie, where the movie's black and white, and at the end it's color. The whole color part, I feel like they got into Sundance and then they're like, okay, we have more money, let's go shoot this and let's do the sound mix, let's get everything ready. And just like elements of it didn't feel finished to me in a way that they could have, and in a way that's really necessary. I think if you're making a horror movie about sound, about podcasters, your sound needs to be pristine.
Yeah, I felt like, okay, I need to preface this by saying I watched this movie with my uncle because he loves movies and he was really excited that like I got all these screeners to watch Sundance movies. We couldn't finish this movie, and the sound, I think, was one of the reasons why. Like when the woman was podcasting with her microphone and the sound was bad. I don't know. I couldn't finish it. So I can't even give a full review because we did not get through it. But
So I'll say this. There were moments where it was dragging to the point where I didn't necessarily want to finish it, but I felt like I had to. And I'm glad I did, because you missed all the best parts of the movie. like it really does. The third act and the coda are pretty cool. It's still, especially, I was watching it the whole time. It was interesting because I have a very personal beef where I feel like sometimes people make horror movies because they feel it's low hanging fruit, like they're going to make money because they're making a horror movie, but they don't love horror, and you can tell when like horror is not in their DNA. Like they're just, it feels, I don't know, it feels like a disservice to the art form. And for a lot of this movie, I thought that was the case. I thought that this was like the zombie moments weren't scary. The sound wasn't right. There was a lot going on that I was really kind of surprised by. And then in the third act, it goes full horror and it gets really good. And like the action's really good, and the horror's really good, and the kills are interesting, and the gore is nice. And then it's got this weird color coda thing that's really cool, and I think well done. But then when I watched the Q&A, I didn't realize that the director is like a big TV director who directs a lot of horror TV. She's done The Exorcist, and most specifically Westworld, and then most specifically 2 different series in the Walking Dead franchise. And so that, it made sense what I saw in the third act, but then I was wondering about how that like squared up with the earlier zombie moments. And maybe she was just trying to do something different. Maybe the edit's not done yet. I don't know. But I think that's enough on this movie. I was so excited for it. Maybe they'll fix it. And I just think they could have done more. So this next one is, I'm so conflicted. I feel so weird about this. ATROPIA is, I had a bunch of friends who worked on this in like pretty meaningful capacities, and I will not say anything here that I would not say to their faces, which is This movie looks incredible. The production design is unbelievable. The idea is phenomenal. It looks like they either had a ton of money, which if they did, good for them, or they made it look like a ton of money, which again, good for them. I mean, this movie felt like $10 million.
It was giving
huge.
budget. Like the first 5 seconds, like I couldn't believe it. We didn't really talk about the movies, but this was like one of the things we talked to each other about briefly, and I'm not even kidding. Like, that's all I could think about the whole time was how incredible it looked.
It looked amazing, and it was one of those weird movies where, and again, maybe this is an early edit. It's one of those movies where, how do I articulate this? Where the parts are greater than the sum. Like, everything about it. I love the actors in it. I loved the way it looked. I liked the music. I liked the idea behind it is great. Like,
the concept was insane.
The concept here is there are these real towns where they do war simulations. So the U.S. does war simulations. So like whomever it is that we might be going to war with at the time, this movie's set in the Iraqi war, whatever they called that, not Desert Storm, the one after that. The one I was like in my 20s for, so I should know the name of it. But the second time, the time where Saddam ended up in a bunker at the end, it's so it takes place during that Iraq war, and they build this Iraqi city called ATROPIA, which they mention at the end, which is very, very cool, very scary, that it's now built to look like a Russian city. But they have these simulations, and there's actors who pretend to be Iraqi citizens in a village, and the troops have to go in, the American troops have to go in and like sweep the city and try to build relationships with people and try to see like who's a baker and who's a terrorist and who's an insurgent and all these things. And so it is a really interesting grounds for like a character story of the actors and the soldiers, but then also this bigger kind of social story of like, how does art reflect life and life reflect art, and how does that come together in this theater of war, right? They even call it the theater of war. And you can see that really, I think especially the with the what's the dude's name? He's in a really funny comedy duo. I love him. He's like the general or whatever, or like the sergeant who's in charge of it. It's like him and Chloe Sevigny.
I can't remember his
Tim
name.
and Eric. It's Tim from Tim and Eric. He's in the comedy. He's a great actor.
The cast is crazy.
That dude, the cast is nuts. So how can I not think of Tim Heidecker? So it's Tim Heidecker. His character and Chloe Sevigny's character is like, it just shows the absurdity of a lot of this. And the whole movie's really absurd, which I love. I love absurdist comedies. And the director in the Q&A said that was her goal with this, is she wanted to make like a Dr. Strangelove style absurdist comedy for that generation. Like MASH was an absurdist movie, the absurdist dramedy set in the Vietnam War. And there's been a million movies made about the Vietnam War. Man, we have struggled as filmmakers, as a film community, to make good movies about the most recent wars. Yeah. I think like there's like Hurt Locker and Black Hawk Down, and then Jarhead, like iffy. But I don't know what it is about, like they were making great Vietnam movies 10, 12, 15 years removed from the Vietnam War. They were making great World War II movies during World War II. Like, why can't we make... I've got a theory, but you want to hear my theory?
Yeah, I do, because I have a theory too.
So here's my theory there's a way to like clip this, I believe the internet would call it these days, to make this sound like a horribly insensitive comment. But because yes, there are wars, they are horrific, lots of people die. I forget what the death count is in the Russian-Ukraine thing right now. It's insane. Like there's wars happening all over Africa, obviously. There's like Israel and Palestine right now. There's a lot of war happening on our planet and amongst our humankind, and it's horrific, and people are dying, and that's horrible. But ever since we become like nuclear as a people, as George W. Bush would say, as a people. I love that. Like, whatever. People misspeak. I probably misspoken like 10 times, but I love the fact that you're not the guy that has the nuclear codes. You're not the guy with the button who can't say the word. And look, history has not looked back on. I had a friend who once told me this, that history would look back on George W. Bush as a better president than people thought he was at the time, and like largely that's kind of playing out to be true, with the exception of few big misses. But he was an easy dude to make fun of because he misspoke all the time, and it's like the one job where you can't misspeak. Right?
Yeah,
you can't be the guy with your finger on the nuclear button who says nuclear. You just can't do it. And he did. But it's hilarious. And so, but that's part of the absurdity. So anyways, I have heard this argued, and I kind of believe it, and I think this is where my theory translates it into art, is that no, we haven't had the stakes for war aren't what they used to be. In World War I and the first 7/8 of World War II, your army versus my army on the battlefield, that is what determined who was the victor. And it was real. Like, those were the stakes, is we're in trenches, I'm going to kill you, you're going to kill me, we're going to take out our people. This is the thing that we're doing. And ever since we became people that have nuclear weapons of mass destruction, everyone's just sitting back and not dropping those bombs. That's like, so you have these wars that are really like theater, like war theater, where one nation uses a proxy nation to battle another proxy nation, to have these ground skirmishes so that there can be conflict. But if the conflict were truly like existential, like, you are a world superpower, I am a world superpower, I want to take you over, nuclear bombs would be dropped, and nobody's doing that. So like, the wars that happen now don't have the same stakes. It's really sad, because
I feel the same way.
For the people who die, the stakes are real. But for the nations that are at war, the stakes aren't the same as what they used to be, because if they were, they would just drop bombs. They would drop nuclear bombs. And so that, I think
the progression of the weaponry, like from World War I to World War II, like the difference in like the performances and how they fought is a lot more intricate and planned out than like now, where they just have like a bomb and like a threat.
At the start of World War II, there was cavalry. There were people on horseback at the start of World War II. And by the end, there were jets and nuclear bombs. Like, that is where war changed forever. Not that I'm an expert on war, but I've listened to experts on war. So in modern culture, that makes me an expert, right?
Yeah.
But here's where I can actually say something that's of value, is that I think that the same way that those experts theorize about the nature of war changing, I think that our ability as artists to comment on war has changed, and that's why you haven't seen those movies. Granted, Vietnam was like the first skirmish that completely was in this world, where it was like, that was the US versus Russia using these proxy nations and these horrible like atrocities that occurred. So we hadn't quite figured it out. So that mess is why that made for such good art. And it was kind of the first war where the American people weren't fully behind it, where World War II, it's like the Nazis are going to take over. It's not that hard to get behind the horrors of war when you're trying to prevent a greater horror. And then Vietnam, it's like, all right, well, this is these two different ideologies fighting for control over the world, but how much of a difference does that make in the lives of the average people? Like, I don't know. And people were really confused. Soldiers were coming back really conflicted, wondering why they were doing these things. Like, a lot of people were coming back with PTSD and not understanding why they fought the war that they fought. And then I think in the time, so that made for interesting art. And in the time since then, I just think there's like an apathy. Like, I genuinely think, I mean, the U.S. has soldiers like all over the world all the time, engaging in like little skirmishes and conflicts and things, and whatever else they're doing that's like clandestine measures to aid in other people's skirmishes. But I think if we were straight up in ground war with another country right now, people would be interested for a while, and then they'd just like go about their lives. I think that we've become so hardened and so, I don't know, distracted. It's like, do you remember when the Ukraine-Russia thing started?
Yeah. I also think a big part of this is social media. Like, things go away very quickly. Like, people just forget and they start talking about the newest thing. And I think that's like pretty dangerous with social media in general, because like our capacity, we're like taking in too many things that we're not able to handle, I think.
Yeah, so let's make more things, you and I, that
More
people then
stuff,
have to
yeah.
listen to. No, but
Yeah.
the do you remember everyone was putting up Ukraine flags and like
Yeah.
really cared, and it's just that's still
For a
happening.
month.
That's still
Yeah.
happening.
I
Like
know.
it didn't stop. It's still happening.
Yeah.
And no one cares. And
That's
it's
how it just goes now. It's really crazy.
and so I don't think you can make as effective of art about a war that people stop caring about after 6 months or
Yeah,
3 months or
definitely
whatever it is.
not.
That's just, yeah, I think you're right. We're distracted. That says more about who we are as a people than it says about anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, the movie itself, overall, like that really is my review, is a lot I liked about it, but the overall movie felt lacking in some way.
I was kind of expecting the main character to kind of break out of this job and like find a role in Hollywood as an actor or something. Like that's just what I thought in my head. Um, but yeah, I feel like nothing significant really happened. I just liked that there was some good dialogue and some witty bits, like when the main actress she started singing the OC theme song, and I thought that was absolutely hilarious.
That was the one note I took for this entire podcast, is that this was, again, the Coppolas coming into our podcast. We watched these
Yeah.
Sundance movies. Coppola's didn't have a movie in Sundance. There is the lead actor in this movie, ATROPIA, singing a cover of a Coppola family song. When you're here, we need to get
Good
that
thing we
board
saw
up.
it. Yeah,
We need to get that
seriously.
board up. Good thing we saw it. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I wish Atropia could have been awesome. Could have been
For
awesome.
sure.
It was. I think it was close. I think it was close to being awesome, and not there. But okay, now we're on to the movies that we didn't see. So I'm really interested to hear, what did you see that I didn't see, and how was it?
Okay, so I saw two other movies. One of them was a documentary called Life After, and it basically was just following the right to die and how people who are disabled, if they should or should not have that right, and how that works. And it's like, you would think it's just like something so cut and dry, like if they want to die, they should be allowed to die. But there were some stories in there of experiences where people were given the right to die, but they were given that right because family members like didn't want to take care of them anymore, and there was just so much more behind it in that process. And also, it was the director has I can't remember if it was like cerebral palsy, something. Like he was also disabled, and so he was kind of like going through this with people who were kind of on the same page. Like one of the stories was about a teenage girl who decided that she wanted to die because like she was living a miserable life. But part of the controversy with that was that her condition would be getting better, but her mom just didn't want to deal with it. The doctors didn't want to deal with it anymore. So it was just kind of like a psychological what's right, what's wrong. And I thought it was really good though. It was sad, but super good.
Yeah, I've watched a couple of documentaries, mostly like about euthanasia and elderly people who are like just old and not feeling well, or have like
Yeah.
debilitating illnesses or conditions. And I mean, it's a tricky one, right? Because I'm not pro suicide, but at the same time, it's like, who is it? It's definitely a French philosopher. Nobody else would say this, but I don't know if it's Sartre or somebody else. It's like, suicide is the ultimate human dilemma. Of the one thing that we're supposed to do is always want to survive. You're supposed to fight to survive no matter what. That is what humans do. We try to survive, and then people don't want to live. But I feel like also as a human, like, isn't that the ultimate right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's a good decision, but
Yeah.
we have the rights to make tons of bad decisions. So yeah, it is an interesting one. It's a bummer of a topic.
Yeah, it was a super bummer, and I watched it right in the morning, like right when I woke up, and I was like, wow,
Sweet.
that was heavy. I was feeling good. I went on a run, and then come back, watch this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
think about death for 90 minutes.
it was definitely heavy, but still super, super good. I'm happy I got to watch that.
So my next
Yeah.
one was another black and white movie called OBEX. This is the
Okay.
one that I contacted the producer of. Oh
Okay.
my god, was it great.
Wow.
It was a black and white analog horror inspired fantasy movie about a guy who is like a bit of an agoraphobe. He's kind of stuck in his apartment. This person's delivering his food. What are you laughing at?
Agoraphobe.
Yeah.
That's
he's
us.
Yeah, he's stuck in his place. He's got this huge VHS collection. He has a really interesting job. It's a period piece, so it's like set in the 80s, and he's got this dot matrix computer printer, and he's got like a computer. I don't know if it's an Apple IIe, something like that. Some maybe it's a micro, whatever. It doesn't matter what the computer is. It's an old computer, and he is doing like keyboard character art of portraits. That's his job. People send him a portrait, and then he takes the keyboard. And do you remember people used to do this? Like in chat rooms, people used to draw things. They were called macros at the
Yes.
time. So this dude does that and then prints them and then sends them back. That's what he does for a living. It's awesome.
my
But
God.
he's also a gamer. So he gets an invite to this game where he has to send in an image of himself, kind of a reversal, and then they put his face into the game, like a digital version of his face into this game. And it's one of these like turn-based games where they ask you a question and you give an answer, and then I used to play some of these games. I used to play this game called Gemstone 3. If any total dork out there also play Gemstone 3, like please comment, because I want to talk to you about it. It was a text-based game that I played in like the early 90s. So it was like a game with like Dungeons and Dragons, wizards and things, but there are no graphics. It's all
Yeah.
just your imagination. So like it all happens. It was an online game, and it was like interactive, but it would just tell you like you are now locked
Like
in a dungeon.
Oregon Trail, whatever.
Oregon
Or
Trail
worse.
had graphics. This didn't
Barely.
have any graphics.
So
This
less than that?
Less, no
That's
graphics.
crazy.
It was just words. It was like a text message, but it was on
Ugh.
your computer, and so it's like you are stuck in a like similar to Dungeons and Dragons, but without the board pieces.
Okay.
Like, you're stuck in a dungeon. There is a key on your left. It doesn't fit the keyhole on the right. There's a troll in front of you. Hit 4 if you want to attack the troll to see if he has the key. You have to hit 4 to attack the troll and see if you survive. And like, how do you fight the troll? What do you have in your toolkit? It was so cool and so fun. So anyways, this guy's playing a game like that, but that has some graphics, very minimal, with his face in it. And he's got this little dog that he's like obsessed with. And his life and the game start to merge. And he believes his dog goes missing, and that the villain in the game in the nether regions or whatever it is has his dog, and he has to go battle through this world to find his dog. And like the limited people who are in his life, including a character that is his childhood TV, like a head on a body for his childhood like a TV as a head, are in this game. And so he like the lady that brings his food shows up several times as different characters. It really becomes a story of this guy dealing with his like messed up childhood and his dad leaving him and him being in denial about it. His mom always said that his dad like died in a boat or plane crash or something, but the reality was he just disappeared. He's got to deal with all these things through this game, and they do it in a way like it's not a big budget movie, but like he essentially like there are knights and there are wizards and there are witches and there's all these cool fantasy elements in this really lo-fi analog horror, analog fantasy way. The music is done by Deacon from Animal Collective, which is incredible. And everything about this movie, I've mentioned this, I think this is the third time that I've mentioned this on this podcast. This is a movie that I was so inspired, but also so mad that I didn't make it. Because it's like the
Crazy.
intersection of so many of my interests. So yeah, I'm talking to the producer hopefully Monday to kind of find out, I have some specific questions on how they did what they did, how much money they spent, how much time they
Join
had.
forces.
Yeah, well, I've already worked with them. It's the same company,
Oh.
Cartoona, who did the animated sequences in Mr. Crockett.
Oh wow.
So they were one of the production companies, and the video game
Did
animation
this
is
one
phenomenal.
get sold?
OBEX?
Yeah, or no?
I
Because
I don't
only three
think
movies
so.
sold, right?
More have sold now, but
Okay.
I don't know what the overall take is. It was looking to at a certain point like a pretty weak sales slate. So as people who don't know, there's production companies who make movies. They find the actors, the scripts, the ideas, they put the financing together, they go make the thing. They produce it. And then there's distributors who are the people that take the movie and find a home for it via streaming or theaters or whatever. And then there's exhibitors. Exhibitors are the theaters themselves and the streaming platforms or other platforms where you can see a movie. So a lot of movies go to Sundance, and a production company will have produced it, hoping to find a distributor who then pays them for the movie, or at least finds a place where it can put out, and then they can split profits. Some movies come into Sundance with distribution, like I think the first doc that we watched, Deaf President. Now I think Apple is already putting
Yeah.
that movie. I think it's an Apple
Yeah,
movie.
it
So
is.
some of these movies have distribution, some don't. A lot of the movies that don't have distribution hope to come into Sundance, where movies are known for selling for a lot more than they were made for. Like I've had that experience. It's very fun. There's a bidding war, and it's all these things. It's like what you think of when you think of independent film, and like the dream of it, and that kind of lottery ticket element. And a couple movies have sold for quite a bit of money at Sundance this year, but I don't think very many. And I think generally speaking, it's not been a huge sales year for Sundance, although it is changing. Yeah, by the time Sundance ended, I think only 3 movies had sold. I don't think OBEX did. I also don't know if they're, I don't know like if they're looking for a distributor or what
Yeah.
the plan is, or if it just the sale wasn't announced or wasn't announced yet or whatever. But it is, it will find an audience. I think it's
Yeah, for
pretty,
sure.
pretty. It's niche-ish. But I also think the niche that it's in has a big audience, which is people who are into video games, people who are into fantasy, people who are into... It's scary. It's genuinely scary. So I think there's a bit of a horror crossover. And
It
was
kind of
just...
sounds like a Kimmy type of movie.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. It's... But fantasy, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I think that it is, there's multiple niches that it fits into, and it's also just like wholly its own. It's super original. It's really cool. Like, this is the kind of movie that you absolutely hope to see when you go to a film festival like Sundance, where
Man.
somebody made it for presumably not a ton of money, but has big ideas and great execution and is super entertaining. Like every minute
Yeah.
of this movie is entertaining, and it's got pathos and heart, and it's sad and it's exciting and it's funny. It's all those things. It's like a really good. I wish I would have seen this in the theater because this is a
Yeah.
great theatrical movie. Also a really good movie to see by yourself in a dark house eating a bowl of cereal, getting totally freaked out about the confusing nature of reality and the fact that you could at any moment fall into a delusional state where you can't tell fantasy from reality, and you're chasing your dog who is just walking down the block into a video game world where he's being held by an evil wizard, and you have to confront all the traumas of your entire life.
Nice.
So what else did you see? Anything? Or is that it?
I saw BUNNYLOVR, which...
Oh yeah, it's supposed to be good.
So, here's the thing. I wanted to look at the reviews for this because I was super curious what everyone was thinking, and I feel like people definitely didn't get it the way that I did. I mean, it was good for sure. A lot of people on Letterboxd were like, they advertised Rachel Sennett and she should have been in it more. Like all these things, and like, oh my god, that's so annoying. And I also think a lot of people thought that it was boring, but it was pretty much just like a character study of a cam girl. So think like OnlyFans, think like that world. And basically like it was just kind of showing her days, like very boring. Her job is very boring. Things weren't going right in like her real life. Like her dad was sick. Her friends were like not the best friends, and like her world was just kind of not amazing. But as someone who has like worked as an editor for someone who does OnlyFans and who has worked with other OnlyFans girls, I've seen that world, and it was like so perfectly nailed at the way that they live their lives. And it's boring. It's super boring and it's really sad. But I think they executed it really well.
It was interesting. I didn't see the movie, obviously, but the general kind of, if you look at like film journalists, there's a kind of like, there's actually beef happening between two famous film journalists right now about Sundance.
Ooh.
And one of them saying that it was like a absolute failure and independent film is dying, and the other one saying like, no, it's just some Sundances are great, some aren't great, and the festival continues. But it was a more nuanced argument. But anyways, the one guy called the other guy a blowhard, which I thought was pretty great. But the guy who was called the blowhard, who has a cool he has a cool Substack. He's like an independent journalist.
You got me at Substack.
Substack's great. We're going to have a Substack.
Whatever.
We are going to have a Substack. It's great. So, anyways, the democratization of media. Everyone just creator-controlled, creator-owned. Why go get a job working for another publication where you can start your own? But I digress. So, this writer was at the Eccles Theater, which is the biggest theater at Sundance. And Sundance, normally it's winter in Park City, Utah. People are wearing boots and big puffy coats and things. Like, it's not a fashion show like so many film festivals like Cannes or any other film festival. It's not
miserably
that.
Cold.
It's wear what you can wear to not freeze to death is what it is, and not get soaked. One year it was the worst ever. I was so mad about this too. Like, okay, so it was the first time I went to Sundance. Actually, I didn't have a movie there. I was working there as I had a friend who like owned a company, and they were doing this demonstration for a company called Red, which makes cameras, and I was part of it. But anyway, so I get invited to go to this thing, and I'm like, sweet, I'm gonna go to Sundance. It's gonna be so much fun. Everyone's telling me like, dress for the warm, dress for the cold, dress for the cold. I'm like, I'm from Michigan, bro. Like, you're California people. I don't care what you have to say about this. So I wore low top Converse that had holes in them, and I was just walking around with wet feet for a week, soaking wet feet. And I was like, the thing that sucked about it was that I didn't care that my feet were wet. I didn't care that I was cold. I cared that everybody kept commenting on it. And they're like, oh my God, why don't you go buy some boots? And I'm like, I'm so stubborn that I didn't go buy boots just because people were telling me. If nobody would have said anything, I'd have been at the boot store.
I would have been the same way. If people say it, like,
no, sorry. I'm wearing a denim jacket, no hat, no gloves, and Converse with holes this entire time.
You would.
So that was my first Sundance experience. And why this is relevant is because this journalist who's been going to Sundance for like 30 years said that the minute he walked into the Eccles Theater, which is it's the biggest theater there. It's for all their like big premieres. He couldn't understand why Bunny Girl, or BUNNYLOVR, a small movie, was playing at the Eccles, first of all. And when he walked in, he said he saw people like he's never seen at Sundance before, which is like a bunch of fashionable people and young girls specifically. And he realized then, like, okay, this is the future of independent film. It's all these people who, like Rachel Sennett is like very popular on Letterboxd. And so she's like a Letterboxd influencer, I guess. Is that fair?
I suppose.
And so this different crowd followed her to this movie, to this place, and it's like a vibe shift, right?
It's like gratifying independent films. It's like the girls and the gays. That's what people would say. I feel like it's not. Right. It's not how it was.
She's brat adjacent.
Oh, she was literally in that video. Like,
yeah. So that is interesting, and I think that like where that's inspiring to me is that I think I don't have this feeling because of you. Like, you have talked me off of this ledge, but if you were to talk to like the fear mongers in Hollywood proper, they think film is dead, and they're like, Sundance is dead, film is dead, the industry's dead. Like, a certain segment of the industry's dead, but it's a part of the industry that needed to die anyway. And this is just, I think, so the good part about this always happens. We've talked about this before, about the studio system and how it always starts to suck and it makes bad stuff, and then new people come in and new blood comes in and fresh ideas, and they make great movies again. And I think that's where we're at, is this really exciting point in movies. And I think that was I don't know, I guess the bellwether of the cultural change is that young people went to Sundance looking different than the typical Sundance crowd, going to see a movie that wasn't a typical Sundance movie, or maybe it was, but they did something different, and they're bringing a fresh energy into what is seen as a dying system, which is proof the system's not dying. It's just changing and probably going back to what it was in the early 90s when the festival took off in the first place.
Yeah.
And
that
was
must have
this
been very
dude's take.
scary. That must have been super scary to see all those girls in there. My God.
Yeah, it sounds like it. He sounded excited about it. He's like scared. He said he felt really self-conscious about what he was wearing, but then was really excited that there's like a new generation of people that actually care about movies and care about independent movies. And I think that's what we're tapping into. I think that's why this is cool that you and me do this together, because it is. And I'm also starting to see on the movie that we're producing right now, there's like a handful of people who, there's one guy who's working on it. I think he's a PA. I don't know. I think he's PA, but he's got a documentary that he directed that he made on his own that I'm trying to help him with distribution on. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool that young people still care about movies, are making movies, want to work on movies, want to do things. Because if you were just to listen, if you were to be amongst the Hollywood executives, they're like looking for the exits. Just like thinking the industry is dead. And this is all proof that it isn't. It's just changing.
Yeah, for sure.
So where do we go from here?
Where are we going from here?
I want to go. I don't think we should look at a lot of times on this podcast we look at reviews on both Letterboxd and Rotten Tomatoes.
I think you'll cry. They're very evil. I looked. So
there's just not going to be many. These movies aren't out yet.
Yeah,
they're like only a festival, so I don't see the point. Why do that? I think that we should sort of leave this there and say next Sundance we're going there. No matter what. We're going. Hope to have a movie there.
Last
if
one
not,
in Park City.
We're still going to go. Last one in Park City. We will be doing the Solo Moviegoers podcast from Sundance, talking to people from the movies. We probably could have done this time. There's a handful of people we could have talked to. I'm going to get you more comfortable with talking to other people. I'm going to force you into it. I'm going to shame you.
I'm comfortable with interviewing people. I just can't do it with you.
Then you do it on your own. Be like an outside correspondent. I'm going to shame you on the set of this movie by telling everybody that we want to do this and invite people on. But you don't want to interview them with me.
Whatever, bro.
But yeah, we will be together for our next podcast. Again, I don't think we'll do it from a car like we did last time, but who knows? Maybe we will. We'll do it in some way. We're going to see a movie with cereal.
I thought about going in my pool to record this episode with my mic, but
that's a good idea. We should see like a water themed movie. I would do a podcast from a pool.
Yeah, I think.
Or like if you're in LA and I'm in Michigan, and we do it not in summer, what would be my equivalent? Like I could sit out in a snowbank.
Yeah, you would love that.
And I would love that. But yeah, so we will see, depending on when we can go and when you get here, and if Companion or Presents are still out. I would love to go see one of those with some cereal.
Same.
And then find an interesting place to do the podcast. But yeah, we're back. We aren't going to be as frequent as we had been. We haven't been as frequent as we had been. Once this movie ends, we'll be back to our frequency. Thank you for bearing with us in these barren times. Bearing with us in these barren times, does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, that was fun. Thanks for doing Sundance with me. Virtual Sundance.
Yeah. Thanks, bro.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate you, bro.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And that is it for us. Peace.
Swag, money, YOLO.
Music.
Out. Ooh.